they do a film that is social media gone awry. It is horribly embarrassing and awful. But it's a sort of interesting idea of someone stalking someone they find on Instagram and trying to invade their private life. I think that's something that if you can at least agree on, you can kind of like look at envy at Facebook sometimes when you're like particularly not doing anything and you're like, look at all these people doing stuff. They're the worst. So I can at least
for being happy.
They were terrible. And so I think it's an interesting idea, and I like Aubrey Plaza a lot. I just hope it's not horribly embarrassing about the tech is all, because some of these movies can be. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, but anyone else? Trevor, turn up your mic a little bit. You sound really quiet. I can't really particularly hear you, and you won't be heard on stream. But before Trevor comes back, one of the things that I think is interesting is kind of Aubrey Plaza's career and kind of like the difficulties that she's like had as a star a little bit in terms of like kind of evolving past, I suppose, like Parks and Rec. And I think that's kind of a mean way to put it, but like one of the things is that like you see kind of the evolutions of certain stars. Do you think this is sort of like an Aubrey Plaza motivated movie, or do you think this is the thing that could rocket her career forward?
I'm curious because I feel like she tried right after Parks and Rec to do more traditional movies. Particularly, I'm thinking of what was that movie? The Sex List, the one where she wanted to get laid.
Oh yes,
and she hadn't gotten laid, and that's like such a very classic kind of movie for like a young ingenue to kind of do. And now I feel like she is trying to like upend her career. She's fucking fantastic on Legion. If you haven't watched Legion, she's really, really interesting on that show. And I feel like she's trying to play up like a little bit of the terror creepiness behind her sort of I don't care persona, which I like, because for a while I was like, oh, you're just being the I don't care person. But now I feel like she's kind of evolving that to an interesting way.
Yeah, I want to see her kind of take a different role, and I guess like that's the difference between her and Chris Pratt is like Chris Pratt evolves beyond it. One of the things is actually interesting. I don't necessarily think that Chris Pratt actually evolved in the role, and it's just like we needed a Chris Pratt like character in society in the zeitgeist, and so like as he took on new roles, it was like that type of character actor was sort of needed. And I think that's the thing is like her type of character actor was not needed. And I'm not giving shade to either one. I just think that both of them tend to play a type of character, and that is kind of a problematic to like the necessary like kind of evolving their film.
That's why I wouldn't call him character. I call him movie stars. You know what I mean? Chris Pratt is a movie star. He's always Chris Pratt in a movie. But when the movies match that Chris Prattness, it's at its best, like in Guardians. And
yeah, absolutely.
If it's like Passengers, it kind of doesn't match his Chris Prattness. It doesn't really work. And I feel like Aubrey is a similar character.
Isn't that the nature of like going from TV where you have, a bunch of episodes and everyone kind of gets to know the characters really well, and then kind of catapulting yourself into a movie setting, right? Like, I think they've cast Chris Pratt better just because it's, I don't know, it seems like he's had more of kind of a role in Parks and Rec where, it's easier to kind of put that into the movie setting, right?
Yeah, I think his character is more easily acceptable all the way around. I think you're absolutely hit the nail on the head, Sean. I think his character may be more acceptable. Like I was trying to put it as like he's needed in the zeitgeist, but actually as I think about it, it's just maybe there's more roles for that type of character within movies than it is necessarily at Aubrey Plaza's. Aubrey Plaza. Is like in terms of her character, it's funny, but it is inherently more of a side character, which I guess like how many characters have kind of a good-hearted two shoes guy at their core, i.e. Andy from Parks and Rec. So maybe that's just the thing. I guess like this is the thing is like I'm not interested in this movie in its context so much as I am very interested in the context of like Aubrey Plaza's career and seeing if she can find stuff, because she's still in that terrible whatever like Nuns movie that's coming out with.
I'm excited for that.
I'm really excited about it.
That one looks fun.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're gonna talk about this one next. What the fuck is that? Like, is that like somebody's passion project somewhere? Because I have no idea.
It's apparently based on Boccaccio's The Decameron, which is like kind of hilarious. I think it's just somebody's bizarre weird Sundance idea, that's kind of broken out a little bit because it's got a great cast. But yeah, it's just nuns being filthy and degenerate.
I'm really excited.
It makes me so curious as to like how any of that is going to play out. I think that's why I'm interested in seeing it. So it's just like, who came up with this? How did you come up with this? How is this going to play out? That's where my interest lies for that film.
And I also love Aubrey Plaza, so I'm really excited. I like her darkness. She's just creepy and weird, and I love it.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw Aubrey Plaza was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and so how she's like and it just heroic. It's like, are you being serious? How are you doing that with your mouth? So it's like I have that image of her, and it's like I want to see her in this film just be like, there is no black box that she's just somehow materializing out of thin air. She's just saying the words like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, I'm here for it.
Can we just point out that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World has like every great young female actress in it before they were famous, like Mae Whitman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Alison Pill and Aubrey Plaza, and there's like so many people I'm already forgetting. Like it's insane.
Oh, and just a heads up to our viewer, if you want to head on over to Twitter now, if you see me being kind of out of the cast for a minute, that's because I'm trying to post all this to Facebook and Twitter. Go check it out there. Y'all want to share it, do all the things. We're going to be multitasking up in here. But if you want to head on over to Twitter now, you can post some comments. We'll answer them live on air. Head to YouTube, all the places, Twitter, Facebook, just all the social media. Like me on Instagram if you want to. All right.
Because you need to see more of this with filters.
Hey, I don't filter. I edit photos. I am a professional wedding photographer. My shit is edited. Lightroom.
Yeah, I don't know.
Get that shit out of here.
You're not better than Instagram.
I am.
Yeah.
My bank account would differ, Sean. I am paid to be better than Instagram.
Well, Instagram's also big company. They make a lot of money too.
No, I'm not paid more than Instagram. It's a multi-million-dollar company. I'm paid more than most of the photographers on Instagram. Sean, god damn it.
QED, motherfucker. You're not paid more than Instagram.
Okay, whatever. Do you have a lot of likes on Instagram, Sean? I really am interested in seeing all your drink pics. I love that we need to create a bot that monitors how drunk Sean is via Instagram. It's doable, I think. All right, that was sorry. All right, for you, the listeners of the Movie Gang podcast, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any noob subscription at lootcrate.com. To save 10% on any noob subscription, go to trylootcrate.com/gang. Don't forget the /gang, because we are the only gang on the internet that reps Loot Crate. Not like those other gangs on the internet. And enter promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is like somebody that loves you, because we know if you don't have anyone in your life that loves you, which happens, it's okay. You might be unloved if you're listening to this podcast. It's okay. It's Sunday night. It's cool. There's somebody out there for everyone. Remember that.
There's a great picture I saw that sums up podcast where it's a guy and he's sitting in front of a picture of like 3 people laughing from a billboard. He's like, and it's like what it's like to listen to podcasts. So you're like, yeah, you say that, Scott Aukerman.
It's okay. Sometimes that person for you out in society happens to be a company that you have to pay to send you gifts, and that company is Loot Crate. It's like people out there that understand what you really like. So let's say your mother has to like you, and she gives you gifts of socks. Fuck socks. Go to lootcrate.com. Get a loving gift every month that's personalized for you in terms of like your likes. And you can pick different boxes every month. It's like a gift that, will actually be filled with things that you want, as opposed to everyone else in your life that doesn't understand you. So to save 10% on any new subscription, go to trylootcrate.com/gang. Again, that's trylootcrate.com/gang to send 10% on any new subscription. Enter promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. You get savings. We're a coupon podcast. That actually made me feel bad. Made me feel dirty. Okay, moving on to the main review.
Extreme couponing.
Spider-Man: Homecoming. Thrilled by his experience with the Avengers, young Peter Parker returns home to live with his Aunt May under the watchful eye of mentor Tony Stark. Really, is it very watchful? Parker starts to embrace his newfound identity as Spider-Man. He also tries to return to his normal daily routine. Distracted by thoughts.
There it is.
I know, right? Distracted by thoughts of proving himself to be more than just a friendly neighborhood superhero, Peter must soon put his powers to the test when the evil Vulture emerges to threaten everything that he holds dear. All right, let's start up first. Let's start with a guy in the Spider-Man shirt. Peter, what did you think of Spider-Man: Homecoming?
Spidey 3.0. You would think that in such a short time span with like this being the second reboot, I would be tired of Spider-Man, but I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. This was fun. This was a fun movie for me, and I think that everyone played their part well. I think Tom Holland was a great choice. I mean, I know we said that last year after watching Civil War, but like I'll say it again. Like I think it was a great choice for this role, and it was a really fun like 2.5 hour time that I was sitting in that theater. So yeah, it was a good movie to me. I enjoyed it a lot.
I feel like I'm the anti-Peter because I've never cared about Spider-Man. I never saw Spider-Man 3. I didn't see any of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I have never grew up with Spider-Man. I never really cared about Spider-Man. I thought the first 2 movies were fun, but I don't love them like some people on this cast.
Wait, Sam Raimi.
And I went to this movie.
You think the Sam Raimi? Oh no! I got back up. You think the Sam Raimi movies are fun?
Yeah, the first 2.
No,
that's
what I was saying.
Spider-Man 1 and 2. The original Spider-Man 1 and 2. I know there's like 2 of them now. It's crazy. And I went to this movie cynically because here are the facts. This is a movie that has 6 credited screenwriters. This is a movie with a director who has directed movies that cost less than $10 million. This is a movie that is split between 2 companies in this weird custody battle. And it's a movie that has Iron Man in it, like almost feeling like, hey guys, Iron Man's here at least. And I found it not just functional, I found it fucking really, really enjoyable. I was shocked how much I really enjoyed this movie, and it might be above Logan and Wonder Woman for me. At least I'm just on that high right now, and I need to let it settle for a bit. But it is, I think, a genuinely enjoyable, clever film that puts the character back into focus of the story, which is what makes it so good. I've been kind of bored on Marvel lately, but for me, this was just a very character-focused, good story with a good villain, shockingly, and genuinely interesting moments and action that was led by character, which is something I've been missing so much from superhero movies. Like, it was just a damn good film.
2 points. First, I want to address that the Vulture's design in this movie was so cool.
It was cool.
Like when his whole thing was that like it was like a heist thing in his second form that he just creates an air seal and comes up through the ship. I was like, okay, that's motivationally super cool. But
it's cool.
Yeah. The second point I want to jump in here too, because I forced someone to be on this cast tonight to be essentially the anti-Marvel. I actually don't know if she still feels that way, but we're going to find out. Bobby Pike, what did you think of Spider-Man Homecoming?
You knew it was coming.
I did.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like I have to preface in the fact that I don't watch Marvel movies, nor have I particularly enjoyed the ones that I have seen. The Marvel movies I've seen, I started with the Iron Man series. I saw all of the Iron Man, so at least I'm very familiar with that character. And I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Enjoyed the ones that I have seen. That's come out, I haven't the Marvel movies I've seen. So I started with the Iron Man Homecoming. There's clearly all of the Iron Man, so at least I'm very familiar with that character. So as a blind observer, that part, like, it's not unenjoyable, but it's not nearly as much fun as it would be if you got all the jokes. So it didn't completely take me out of the film. But once we hit the stride, like you're past the opening 30-minute mark and we're really getting into the movie, I really enjoyed it. I was pretty swept up in the story and I was enjoying all the shots. I will say that they kind of lost me there at the end. I did not think the ending was all that great. But most of the stuff in the middle I thought was really solid. And I was amused almost the entire time. So I really thought it was a pretty solid movie, especially not giving a shit about Marvel. So as a straight action, just, I don't care about Spider-Man. I don't care about Marvel. I don't care about this universe. Just as a story with action in it, I thought it was fun.
No, I am so far.
You expected me to slam it right then.
I actually expected everyone to slam it, and I don't know why I got so defensive beforehand.
Wait, really?
I mean, it was a good movie. We all saw like a pretty good movie.
I'm happy to.
Oh, you haven't talked to 2 people. You don't know yet.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Trevor and Sean could hate it. Let's start with Trevor. Is your mic working?
I don't know. You tell me.
Oh, it's good. You're good. There you go.
I'm holding it right against my face, so I think that's gonna work.
Sexy.
Yeah.
Well, it's because he's in this perfect anime pose. That's incredible.
That is true.
Yeah.
he's like,
I'm trying to make it look good because we're live.
Yeah. Right. You wouldn't put a shirt on. That's the key.
Yeah. It's my escape room shirt I got for escaping the room. Here you go.
Oh yeah, good. You got
yeah, I love those things.
I
did that once.
we got like they were having a discount, and we could either get 20% off our next game or free T-shirts.
I had to buy a photo from them. Fuck that. That's like what the fuck. All right, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. Just I guess. I feel like it was just a really generally enjoyable movie, so I'm thinking what we're gonna talk about. For
things to pick apart, so don't worry.
Well, for what Bobby picked up in the opening, this was like the worst part of my experience in this movie is that I went to see it with my family.
Oh yeah.
No. I mean, it was fun to see a movie with my family. That was also the best part when the twist happened. But in the very beginning, it is a little like I enjoyed the flashback to Civil War, and Spidey has his home video of it. I enjoyed that part. Yeah. It is a little confusing timeline-wise, I guess, because they have that quick jump to 8 years later. I don't know how they would have necessarily done it otherwise, but my parents were constantly like, when is this? Like, tapping me on the shoulder and trying to get me to explain, like, where in the timeline it was, and I didn't fucking know or care, so I had to, like, turn to my brother and be like, when is this? Like, and he was like,
you see someone in a Spider-Man shirt. When is this?
Yeah, right. And he said after Guardians 2, which I was like, I turned it was like after Guardians 2, and I was like, wait, I thought this looks like it's after Avengers. And he was like, yeah, but it's still the same. I just, that's just gonna be how it goes with any Marvel movie for people that can't keep up, I guess.
And they very purposely play with the timeline here by establishing the right after Avengers moment where the Vulture comes in, which also I really it was pretty funny to have like a Trump Trump supporter as the villain. Essentially, but that's a terrible joke. It's actually I actually enjoy.
He's a blue collar person.
Yeah, he was a
that's
blue collar.
Actually fair. That's totally unfair to say all blue collar people are now Trump supporters.
Right.
So I agree with that. I think I was actually going to give him a compliment though, because I feel like usually that sort of storyline kind of makes me gag a little bit, and I was kind of like very surprised by how enjoyable I found it. And also, like, by the way that, like, they still make him, like, a likable and interesting individual. Not by the end. By the end, he's, like, a douchebag, but it gets there. Sorry, go ahead, Trevor. I totally just, yeah.
No, you're fine. I was just going to jump in and say, on behalf of Michael Keaton, just that, I don't know, Bobby had brought up not liking the ending later. I don't know that he goes, like, full maniacal towards the end. I think he's pretty sympathetic, for me at least, up until the end. And he just never gets, well, I guess post-credits, I had to run out to the bathroom, but post-credits, I guess he gets, like, a final word in the movie. But,
well, that's his most sympathetic moment for me, is in the post-credit sequence, when he, like, purposely does not share Spider-Man's identity, and, like, obviously just a serial killer, Mac Gargan, who's gonna be the Scorpion.
I wish they put it in the movie.
I'm glad, because when I saw Nacho get hit by a car like 5 minutes in, I was like, oh, don't waste him, he's a great actor.
Right? Yeah.
Oh god,
he's like,
Nacho.
Yeah,
he's great.
Yeah,
no, I love that guy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the cool things about Spider-Man villains is I feel like they're always the best part of the series for me is how like kind of complex and like filled out the villains are, and they're not kind of one-dimensional. They always are a little more sympathetic than another series, which I always appreciate. So I don't know, I'm coming into this with my introduction to Spider-Man was actually the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. So it was a huge like departure for me to see like high school Spider-Man, because I guess Tobey Maguire was in college, and it was just
he was in high school.
He was in high school, but it was
he
bullshit.
Was just 30.
But it was a ton of bullshit.
Yeah,
we also didn't spend a lot of time with him in high school, probably for that.
That was one of the
reason.
many I noted jokes about the Raimi Spider-Man movies, which I have a list of. I'll
Ben and I were talking about that yesterday.
Well,
he was like, I have 4
we
jokes listed so far.
We eventually need to tackle the Raimi Spider-Man on here, because that's going to be the overarching comparison about Spider-Man movies. And this is also new for Marvel, because the big interesting thing about this for Marvel is this is the first time that it's a little bit like Marvel's never had to deal with the Batman problem of being compared to the Dark Knight after, and creating new iterations of, say, the Joker and Batman. So this is the first movie that they've had where they're like, there is good Spider-Man movies, so like they have to like do that. And
yeah,
go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just going to say, like, it did a good job for, what it set out to do in creating, I guess probably more comic book, more true to what the original comic book was.
Precisely.
But having gotten introduced to Spider-Man through the Sam Raimi series, like, it just wasn't, like, as gritty. And I didn't appreciate that. Like, it was kind of like a kid's movie in many different ways, which is all well and good.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
disagree with
Finish.
that.
I don't know. But so that's issue number one. You know, I was, especially after seeing something like Wonder Woman Logan, I kind of wanted a more kind of dark, gritty superhero movie, and I just didn't get it. Issue number two is that there just weren't any like interesting female characters in this movie. And maybe this is after seeing Wonder Woman.
I gotta stop us. NG Scully on Twitter said, "I never realized how sassy Jack was until I saw his face."
It's a sassy face. He's a sassy face.
Well, let me finish my
You're always
point.
making eyes at us.
I was like,
Right?
I'm just like, oh, is that what you think? Oh my god.
Yeah, dear listeners, you are now seeing what we see whenever we record.
Exactly. It's good. It's good. Y'all are vindicated. Go ahead.
No, and maybe this is like the Wonder Woman effect on me personally, but like the only two characters was like one was his like love interest who, you know, gets saved, right, and doesn't really have like much motivation other than kind of being a plot device. And then there's Aunt May, who just everyone wants to bang. And then those were like your two female characters in the movie, and it just that frustrated me. I kind of wanted, you know, something more there. So those are my issues with it.
I agree and disagree with the female character thing. I agree that there could have been a lot more fleshed out. That said, I think at least the two main ones of MJ and Liz, I thought were actually fairly interesting. I thought Liz was at least interesting because I was glad that she did not get with Peter at the end, which I was very glad about. If she did, I would be very annoyed. But I think it was nice that she was actually had like this nice little thing about like, I like you a lot. Your life is fucked up and I can't deal with that. Like, and you need to figure your shit out. And I hope you do, you know, like I thought that was a very adult response. And I think they set up MJ as an interesting kind of character that's like, she's more of a jokey character, but I thought she was a good sort of background character. And then at the end, they revealing that that's why she's around Peter all the time. She actually does care. I thought those were both, I thought, at least clever, though clearly the film is about the three male characters in the movie. And that's just what the film's about, you know.
And I think that's the thing is like it in terms of calling her not present in the movie. I think that's fair. I also think it's fair that like it was never intended for her to be a big part of this movie. Like,
yeah, I think they're moving that for later.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like this is Marvel, so like she probably will have a big part to play, and there's no telling what it is. I think Liz's arc is pretty good in this movie. I enjoyed it too. I think one of the issues is that they actually can't technically like they have so aged down the age of Spider-Man that they technically can't like have a completion of the relationship and it not feel very creepy.
Real weird.
Like a little weird. Yeah. But outside of that,
Great sex.
No. This is one of the things that's kind of cool about this, and I think this is the thing. Sean called it an issue. But for me, it's super awesome, the age down level is. And here's one of the things, too. I wish this Spider-Man came before the Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The Sam Raimi Spider-Man I saw as a kid is a much more nuanced and poignant film and has a point. And the difference here is that this one is a much more, I think, kid-friendly and approachable film. And I think that's the thing, is it's not trying to do what Sam Raimi did, which I think is what they should do. And I think as a Marvel film, it's still got that Marvel like technical supremacy in terms of just like its technical ability to deliver a plot. But even past that, I think this is a new level of awesome superhero kids movie. I think this is the most kid superhero movie, and I think it does it just so well. Even though Zendaya like gives him the finger at one point, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, it felt like a teenager movie. That's why I really appreciated it, because when like Liz wants him to go to the pool and he leaves, that actually like got to me and I was shocked. Like I usually like when the high school stuff happens in these kind of movies, it's like, ugh, who cares? But I was genuinely like, no, go be with your friends.
Yeah,
that looks fun.
yeah, you want it to
And I
happen.
was like,
Time to like go try and be a hero.
yeah, that's like a genuinely nice thing where it's like, oh, he's losing his childhood or his teenagehood, I guess, technically, like to this
to Spider-Man.
Responsibility, you know, like, and that's something that I know it's a constant. I from what I understand, that's the big appeal about Spider-Man. It's always like his life gets ruined. You could have like a normal life if you just.
I do have a big gripe that I have to get with that I have to put out there, and this is just purely a comic book gripe. Of them using one of the greatest Spider-Man kind of storylines with him, where the iconic image of him like drowning and lifting the rubble off of himself. Well, it's cool.
That was a great scene.
It's cool
though.
in the context of the film. It's a wasted piece of comic book iconography. because it's so much better in the in the comics because he accidentally gave Aunt May Spider-Man AIDS. He's got to save her, and and it's not. This
is much better.
That was me making a joke. It's not Spider-Man AIDS. I'm sorry. That's
No, I was just like, what are you? No, for me, I was just like, what are you referring to? I forget the storyline.
In the comic book, what happened is that he gave a blood transfusion to Aunt May because she was very sick. And because of that, he's rushing to get her this medicine, and one of his old villains comes and like drops stuff on him, and then he's like slowly drowning, and he can't lift this thing off, and like literally the whole comic book is him monologuing under rubble trying to get it off him. But I know that sounds silly, but it's a really great comic.
No, that sounds great. They're just never going to do that in a movie. I hope you realize that. That's way too cerebral.
I know. It's
well, I mean, I thought that moment worked really well though, because like you really
Yeah, I thought it worked great.
Because you realize how young he is and how he's just like confronting death for the first time, and he's just like, holy shit.
I will say,
he was really coming back to his impossible acting.
This to Tom Holland, his scream there is just like, whoa, shit, like that.
Yeah, if you haven't seen The Impossible, it's basically Tom Holland gets hurt for 2 hours, and he was really like channeling that really, really well. And I like that a lot because it's like you don't see whenever heroes are down, it's usually more about strength. And this was all about fear. You know what I mean? Like he was genuinely afraid for his life and terrified. And you, like Sean says, he's like, oh, he's a fucking 15-year-old kid. He shouldn't be doing this. Like Captain America's a soldier. It's okay for him.
Hold on. Let's hear a counterpoint. I can't just allow us to override Bobby here. Come on, Bobby. What did you think? You didn't like it.
No, I mean, it's not that I didn't like it. I just thought it was rushed. I thought that moment could have held more moment. I felt like the rubble collapsing was actually kind of a muddy scene. It was hard to see anything. I didn't think there was a real clear cinematography moment in it. Like it was hard to keep track of the action. And then you realize he's trapped under the rubble. And like by the time I fully understood what they were trying to do, the moment was over. So I felt like it was just kind of a wasted moment of the film. And that's why I say I don't like the ending, is because as we got towards the end of the film, I thought a lot of the action got muddied, and it could have been better if they'd stretched a little longer. Especially the scenes on the plane. I thought you lost a lot of the action because you were having trouble keeping track of where the camera was and where the people were.
It's bizarre to do an invisible plane at night sequence.
You're just
asking for people to get lost.
It was just hard to keep track of the action. So it's not that I didn't like the moment. His scream is really great, and I liked the water with the mask and him looking into it. I mean, that was a nice moment. They shouldn't have used that one
fucking line though. That was so so good, but they used that fucking overdub.
That was dumb. Yeah. But the rest of it, like I can get where they were going with it, but if they'd stretched it to be like 2 minutes longer, it would have been a better scene.
I appreciate that. I think I'm bugged more by like the comic use of that movie because like I was like best Spider-Man.
I don't know
movie.
the comic.
He was 30. It was a 30-minute movie and he was under the rubble for 25 of it. It was artsy. That's like.
But they're never going to do it. Spider-Man. They might do it in a cartoon, but they'll never do it on a show or something.
I recognize that. Like that's as close as I'm.
Jack, I want my Ultimate X-Men movie of Magneto and Professor X playing chess for 2 hours. That's never going to happen. I know that's never going to happen.
I reckon this is not a true criticism from me. Like I'm criticizing the fact that it's like it's a very cool comic book and a use of this, and that also highlights one of my biggest issues, which is Aunt May. And I think, and not from like a female use perspective, but like as a use of Aunt May, like they can't get over the fact that Aunt May's hot now, and that's like Aunt May is such.
They try to ugly her up, and it doesn't work.
And I think the other thing too
attractive.
Is that like I think Aunt May is a core character from the original Sam Raimi movies that like really helps flesh out the Spider-Man mythos. And I think her absence here is felt a little bit for me personally in terms of like not engaging the core they engage the core Spider-Man mythos, but it's so focused on the school. Like I needed like a secondary figure, especially like since it's clear that like Tony Stark is just like a terrible paternal figure. which I actually think is played so well. Like Tony Stark
is the terrible paternal figure, and Happy is the really bad babysitter. That's just in the other room. Like, yeah, sure, don't break anything.
Yeah. And I think it's actually played really, really well. And I also love the moment when he like Stark literally like reads off a line from the third Iron Man movie when he's just saying essentially. Like he literally says, if you're not good without the suit, you shouldn't have it. And I thought that's such a cool deep. It's not really a deep cut, but it's a cut from the Marvel canon, and that's like in the context of this thing. It's like it's really cool that Spider-Man actually did come later in the canon of the Avengers and all the things that happen in this universe, because it's realistically as that. And it's also like they played with the issue of like this movie focuses on where Spider-Man was in the universe and that he was the everyman superhero. And because of that, it's like him coming to terms with being the friendly neighborhood wall-crawling Spider-Man. And that's just such a fucking cool thing from a comics perspective that like it's just like Marvel to a T. And I guess that's my thing is like, you know, this movie may have problems, but there will never, ever, ever be anything like this. And in the broader context of Marvel, it's so just like mind-bogglingly amazing how tight the production is from one set to another and how they pull from other movies to give context to this movie. And I think that, like, especially since, like, it's really necessary to have seen him. Not really necessary, actually, to see him. And it's not really necessary to see Captain America 3. But still, it's...
just that 17 minutes.
And this film,
so
this film for me did a lot what they promised with the TV shows that I think does a lot better than the TV shows, which is actually explore ground level world in the Marvel universe. This actually felt like those TV shows often feel like they don't really exist in the world. They never have the, you know, noticeably they never have Stark Tower and the skyline. They'll occasionally stuff. And like in this, it's so great that Captain America is this doofy high school like video promoter and all these things. They mention like the Sokovia Accords, and then like I just love that they answer something I always wanted to know, which is like what happens to all that shit that ruins the, you know, New York City and stuff. And they have like a whole thing about damage control and how damage control causes people like Michael Keaton to lose their job, and then he finds ways through the cracks. And it's like, yeah, in a world like this, people will adjust. New kinds of crime will start existing, new kinds of business will start existing, new kinds of government, new kinds of teaching, new kinds of ways to be a high school student. And that's what I felt like was really, really exciting about this movie in terms of an MCU way, was it never felt like Easter eggy. It actually felt like a real universe for once, where a lot of times it feels like, oh, we put Stark on a truck. Aren't we a extended universe, you know? Where this actually felt like it was a real universe, and there was consequences from years and years of superheroes existing in the world.
And that's also the cool thing. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just going to say, like, kind of going off that point, what I thought the best thing they did was, you know, in addition to that, they also recreated, like, just the high school experience really, really well. Like, there were a bunch of scenes in there where I'm like, I was getting flashbacks to high school and just like, oh, that's not a problem that I've had to, like, grapple with in like, a long time. But I, like, remember having these issues.
Right. And
it was really, really cool.
I love, like, also his bully being multidimensional in terms of, like, it not being, like, the jock story over and over again.
Yeah.
Like it's very like that's the thing. It's like bullies come in all shapes and sizes and in different forms, and I love that like it made it multidimensional as well as made the cast multidimensional. It made Liz isn't the same thing, Flash isn't the same thing, but they're all in the sort of same thing. I mean, Flash has a douchebag moment with the trophy, but at the same time, like it's still like it is what it is.
He's more of like a rich, entitled person versus a bro-y jock like he was before.
Which is
it's a different kind of
what you'd expect at like a really technical school, right? Where
yeah,
like
they're super correct. Like there wouldn't be a football team at that science school. So like, what do you do with Flash? Like, no, that's the thing is I think this is the best part about this new Spider-Man film is that like it's thought up so much. Like Ben's right, it's thought up from the ground level. Here are the facts of this universe of things that have fucking happened. These things should have happened as well. Science is much more advanced in the overarching Marvel universe. There's going to be more technically insulated schools with more technical capabilities, and like the standard of education there is going to be better because of it. And I think that's it's all shows through, and it's really really cool. Like just like that vibe in terms of that. In terms of that's the thing is like maybe like watching the Spider-Man experience, feeling it inside the Marvel universe creates an entirely different experience for it. On top of it being like a very good film on top of it. Like it's a very, but it also is like aging down like the Marvel formula into kind of a little bit more of a palatable sense. And I think that it really works for those purposes.
I think it also thematically hangs together very well when you think about high school popularity stereotypically, you know, like his best friend can't keep his mouth shut that his friend is Spider-Man. And he's like, how weird is it to, you know, be famous and people not know it's you? And that ties into just his experience of trying to find a place in high school where at the same time, you know, and he longs for like the bigger thing with the Avengers. And at the same time, that parallels his antagonists' motivations in terms of like, you know, they don't care about the little people and he has to, you know, just learn to like affect his own community and stuff. Like I loved. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Just yeah, that I think it thematically works out really well. Like for instance, how you see him that moment at the party where he almost gets talked into embarrassing just like a terrible idea, and he's saying, this is so stupid, I can't believe I'm about to do this. I'm so glad they didn't go that route. Like it's never too heavy-handed. That's thematically, that high school popularity, that's kind of it kind of just walks on the edge.
It's always
of
an
I just
undercurrent.
love that. Yeah, like I'm so glad that scene didn't happen, because that just been like, oh god, they didn't need to do that.
But at the same time,
And another,
I'm glad that they played with the idea of the scene.
Yeah.
Like they did. They
It
did
was
the
so
best
tense
idea.
because of that.
Thing.
Yeah, you're so tense when it's gonna happen. You're like, oh, you're gonna regret that, bro. You're gonna regret that.
But you understand
because
why? Because like
it's such a teenage thing, like being in high school and having that interaction with your friends, where you mean, yes, it is definitely stuff that is not even close to being this big, but having your friends that like are trying to talk you into doing one thing or another, and like right before you do it, like right before you take that jump, you're just like, should I do it? No, this is dumb. This is gonna end badly. Like that was a very like you said, Sean. That was a very like high school moment that scene brought me back to. I was just like, wow, there are a lot of dumb decisions that I almost made in high school. I was right there where Parker was.
Yeah, well, especially the whole like the scene in the gym where the girls were like doing like the kill, marry, fuck with the Avengers, and
That was funny.
and then he realizes that like Liz likes Spider-Man, and just like and then you fast forward to the party scene where it'd be like super tempting, where he's like, oh, this girl like really likes like who I am, right? Like Spider-Man, and all I have to do is like dress up as Spider-Man, and everything would work out. So you do actually like really feel like the tension that he's facing there, especially as like as a 15-year-old kid.
And there's a great payoff to that idea too, when he actually does save the girl in the elevator scene, and he's hanging upside down, and it's like an homage to the Ramy original when his computer and his suit is like, now's the time when you kiss her.
I just wanted to point out the 4 Raimi references I noticed. Was that one? The one when they're doing Fuck, Marry, Kill, they says, ew, he could be like 30 under that mask. Just really references to Tobey Maguire. He has one point has a very Raimi shot where he's standing in front of the American flag, which was a very famous, iconic shot in the first Spider-Man because it's post 9/11. And then as he's having this like hero shot, someone goes, do a flip. And then the guy my favorite was that Raimi loved extras going, yeah, Spider-Man, and so one guy does that in the boat, and then as soon as Iron Man shows up, he just switches sides. So like if anybody like Scarlet Witch go, yeah, like he just whoever's there, he's happy.
Yeah,
I think the whole boat set piece is one of the better moments action wise.
Yeah, see, I like the action a lot because
it. Great.
And the one thing I'll defend about 3 in a little bit, but quickly I'll just say, I think that's what I liked about each of the action set pieces is it had a character moment. A lot of these movies feels like it's just like, well, we need action now. But like the boat scene was about him failing, him trying to overextend himself, trying to go too far,
literally
him failing,
overextending,
literally failing,
literally overextending.
And that's one thing I'll defend about the third act, which I do agree the action is a little clunky. But what I appreciated is how fucking crazy is it that they put him in a shittier costume for the final action sequence because it makes sense for the character, because it makes sense on a story level. Like a marketing person would want to kill you for that. Like they're like, we gotta sell toys, you idiot.
Also,
we can't sell Peter Parker in a hoodie. But like it actually worked for the character, and his final confrontation is he's in a shittier costume because it's about what the character is supposed to be. And he rejects like the most awesome costume in the world because again it like works with the character.
Also, Iron Spider reference.
Yeah, I the second I saw that, I was just like, okay, I'm thinking of like the Marvel events, Civil War, like the comic, not the movie. I want Iron Spider. I want this to be like.
It'll be in Avengers 3 or 4.
I want this to be red and gold and have four arms basically that he will use. Where is that? Like,
I know.
It'll happen.
I agree with Ben though, in that thematically rejecting the CG costume is such a cool thing. Like that, I totally agree with. I agree with it being a moment. I just think that like I also understand where Peter's
wanted to happen,
and I'm like, Iron Spider.
Cool.
Like why would you reject this?
I know, but I think that's the cool thing about this movie. I think the big thing that I need to get off my chest about this is the version of this versus Sam Raimi, which is, first off, I have a huge bone to pick with some critics, specifically Movie Bob. Don't all groan at once. I saw you, Ben. I saw you. It's cool.
I was gonna say.
He did a 3-part series saying what he would do different for Spider-Man, which, first off, tells you something. But the second part that, like, I think is the issue is that he was talking about Spider-Man and he's comparing it to the original Sam Raimi. And I think one of the big things that is happening is that we have two different Spider-Mans definitely of different times. And I think that's one of the issues with kind of comparing them is, like, and one of the big things about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man is that it's very much a post 9/11 film in terms of its comparison and about the thing that it means. And I think that's the thing is, like, I think Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 specifically is a better movie because it tries to be more. And I guess that's the big difference in comparing these movies is they're trying to do two such different things that it's very hard for me to take points away from this because this movie succeeds at exactly the fuck it wants to succeed at. Do you know what I mean? Like it set out to be a Marvel Spider-Man movie and just hits it in the fucking neck and doesn't. Then it has meaning. It has a meaning. It has a character growth story, but it's not as amazingly put together as Tobey Maguire's failing powers in Spider-Man 2. Also, I think I just enjoy this movie more because I think the humor is a lot better than Sam Raimi Spider-Man because it's just. Yeah. I think the jokes fall a little bit better because literally by that Spider-Man they were I think that they were kind of aware of kind of Tobey Maguire's
comedic
ness,
capabilities,
essentially. Yeah, I think they were and they were playing to that, and so I think some of the humor is just thank you, Sarah. Sarah's not on here. We're done in a minute. Stay tuned to the Tuscan Shed Media Network channel in a minute because we're going to get started with a feast for bros, but we're going to hold off on that. But first off, my point about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I think that's just the big thing here is that there's two entirely different films trying to do two entirely different things. I admit that Sam Raimi's and Spider-Man 2 specifically is attempting to do something so difficult and succeeds at it so much that it's probably a better film. And I think that's true, but I think the thing is that how do you fault a film that succeeds at exactly what it wants to do? Which is
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that I really wish this movie was made before the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, because it does what it does so well and it kind of captures an earlier Spider-Man, but it's just so unfortunate that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy just overhangs this movie so much. Because you're right, not counting the third film because I pretend that was never made. The first two just did such a difficult thing and kind of reinvigorated the superhero genre as we know it today. Without those three movies, we might not have a Marvel universe, arguably. So it was a tough lift, but. Yeah, I think you're right that it did do what it set out to do. Yeah. So props to it for that.
Sorry, guys. I have to, for once, end the podcast a little bit quicker than usual. We're going to go ahead and move to scores. We're going to be on time today. What did you have to say, Peter?
No, I guess I just wanted to bring up how the overall arc of this movie reminded me of one of the more recent Spider-Man cartoons, Ultimate Spider-Man, on the channel, I believe. Yeah. Disney XD that premiered in 2012. It was very much the same thing, which is kind of the story of Spider-Man, where he has been introduced to the whole Avengers team. He is constantly trying to do stuff to prove himself, to prove himself, to Tony and Steve and Nick Fury and all of them. Hey, yes, I am a high schooler, but I can do a lot, and I am worthy of being on this team, and most times they'll be okay, no, you shouldn't, but there will be those moments where there will be that flicker of okay, we admire you and your enthusiasm, your tenacity, and your sheer will of wanting to do the right thing, but eventually over the course of the show, in the same way that we got in the last scene, he eventually realizes, you know what, I'm at with where I am and with the other, as it happens in the show, with the other super powered teenagers who now see me as a leader. Strange enough, I am good where I am, and and thank you for the offer, but I will try to do the best that I can here before I personally feel that I am ready to be like a full-fledged hero. And just knowing about that show, I appreciated that they took that same arc from the show and put it to film, and I think they did it really well without having to like add everyone. It was more without having to add like a bunch of extra characters. It was like, no, this is Peter Parker's story, so let it be told through Peter Parker's eyes instead of Peter Parker and 12 other people.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I just want to say that.
I agree. And hopefully Tom Holland will do maybe 3 or 4 Spider-Man movies, die, and then we'll get some Miles Morales. Sorry, that was legitimate, but like oh my God.
There is a chance that we could get Miles Morales because the character that Donald Glover, Childish Gambino played, Aaron Davis, like the cousin that he mentioned, Marvel
shit!
Miles Morales' cousin's last name is Davis, and so it's
That's
like
interesting.
And so because we now have Donald Glover's character, we may not get it like immediately, but now there was totally a chance that we could get a Latino Spider-Man in this MCU, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah,
they are making a cartoon, you know that?
Okay,
right?
okay.
Making
Yes.
a big...
All right, guys. We literally got to wrap up here. We're gonna start off with you, Peter. You're gonna give us your first score.
Oh my God.
Out of 10, what do you give Spider-Man: Homecoming?
I'm gonna give this a 9.
Damn, son.
I have. I mean, not at all evidenced by the shirt. I will say not at all evidenced by the shirt, but more of just even before I got this, more personally, like I have a long-standing love of Spider-Man and his character and a lot that he represents, even if I don't know everything. And so ever since Spider-Man 1 and 2, it makes me so happy to see a movie that was so well done with one of my favorite Marvel characters that I grew up with. It was a fun movie. The action I thought was excellent. The humor was good. The fights were well done. Even the fights were well done. Even if there were those moments where stuff was like, okay, what is going on? And like we brought up, I like how in the film they brought in, you know, this is like kind of in the same way, you know, like I bring my brother, my youngest brother, who was like born in the year 2000. He is living in a world post 9/11. We got in this film, we got to see teenagers who are living in a world post Avengers 1, and I really liked that.
Okay, moving on to Sean. Out of 10.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I'm gonna give it a 7. I really, really enjoyed the movie for all the reasons you guys have laid out. Like, it was technically well done. There were parts of it that were really, you know, as I said, just the way they did kind of the high school experience and portraying the character, and the way Tom Holland portrayed Spider-Man was awesome. I think it really did what like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man's like completely failed to do. So I was glad that this movie was made. Unfortunately, like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man has just colored my perception of Spider-Man so much that I walked into this movie wanting that experience again, and didn't get it. And it's not this movie's fault. I know that, but it's just like the nature of where we are with this franchise.
I'm impressed that you can recognize that, because I do think there is quite a bit of critic rage out there over that exact issue.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's interesting. It's almost interesting to realize that people have that love of Sam Raimi, like 15. Yeah, like almost like 20 years on. Jesus. Wow, I'm old.
We're old.
Next up is Trevor. What do you get it out of 10, bud?
I'm going to give it an 8. I thought it was a damn good time. I really enjoyed going to see it with my family because of the twist. Just as I'm wondering, okay, we're hitting the third act, he's recommitted to school and going to homecoming and being normal. How is the Vulture going to come back in? And then he goes to the door and to pick up his girlfriend or his date, and then it's Michael Keaton just staring him in the face with a close-up. Me and my whole family were just like, just holding on to each other in the theater. It was so tense, that whole car ride. It was great. That was just a great level of investment, timing, and a really clever twist, I thought, and played into the theme of him just being a blue-collar worker wanting to provide for his family, too, and then he was just a regular guy, kind of. So, yeah, I love that whole scene. the whole sequence.
NG Scully on Twitter wants to know why Jack is making faces at Trevor's reasonable commentary. Has nothing to do with Trevor, I'll say that. Sorry. Apologies for that. Coming up next is Bobby. What do you give it?
Oh, I get to be the pessimist of the group. So it's not that I did not enjoy this film, because I did, and I actually found it to be a really enjoyable 2.5 hours or whatever that I was in the movie theater. I know that I'm missing out on some of the enjoyment of the film because I'm not into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I get why it's built that way, and I get why it's enjoyable for a lot of people. Because if you've seen every movie, there's all these little hidden Easter eggs and these little bits and these moments that are all connected, and I can understand why that is really, really appealing. Because I'm not a part of that, coming into these movies is hard, because you have to go into it knowing you're not going to get a lot of the stuff that's in there. It's not going to make sense. So that's kind of hard to come into. Also, I can't believe we didn't talk about this at all, but the name of the film annoys me. And I might be the only one annoyed by it, but it's like Spider-Man Homecoming. Hey, yeah, Homecoming's going on during the movie. Homecoming has nothing to do with the actual plot of the movie, but for some reason we're going to name it that.
No,
that was obnoxious to me.
I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to disagree because it's about Spider-Man coming home to Marvel.
Yeah, that's what I would say. It's like a meta thing.
Which
it's not meta, it's obnoxious.
There is a lot of meta moments in this
it's
movie.
Obnoxious.
Specifically the Spider-Man Marvel.
It can be meta and obnoxious. Deadpool is meta and obnoxious.
No,
yeah,
it's just obnoxious.
It is a little meta, but it is a little too on the nose, especially when they have that shot where they slowly pan onto like the homecoming sign. I'm just like,
homecoming's coming soon. Homecoming. Yeah. Oh God.
It's like whenever they say actual name.
He's really upset.
They said it. It was like watching Pee Wee Herman and it's like, what's the secret word?
It just annoyed me because I felt like they could have come up with a lot better names for it. I don't know, Vulture, Spider-Man and Vulture or something. You had a cool villain in this.
I'm also really glad they never used the Vulture's name though. That was just a thing. They never actually called him the Vulture. I love that.
No, I get that.
I felt
Vulture.
like it was a classic Spider-Man villain. He's a cool. I'm sorry, he's a cool villain.
I just thought they could have come up with a better name for the movie, is my opinion on the whole thing, and I found it a little obnoxious. But overall, I really enjoyed the film. Now, I recently compiled a giant spreadsheet of every score the Movie Gang podcast members have given for every movie the Movie Gang podcast has reviewed, and as a result, it has changed the way I'm going to review things. So based on previous reviews, I now need to put this movie into the compendium of things that I enjoy. And as a result, it's getting a 6.5 because I did not enjoy it as much as movies I have given 7s to. But that's the range it needs to fall into. So I apologize for how my ratings are going to be actually slightly lower than normal because I'm way too optimistic with films, I've learned.
Your justification is sound.
If it had a better name, it would have gotten that extra 0.5%.
Yeah, that's
0.5% away.
I just can't get on board.
Ben, you're up next.
Yeah, boy, what do I want to rate? Spider-Man versus Vulture: Dawn of Homecoming. I did see Bobby saying, and she did point out I give more 9s than anybody else. So I'm the Roger Ebert of the group. That's fine. I'll accept that. I'm going to stick with my old ratings. Because I rate things how I feel at the time, and I know things change, and I feel like just because I gave it a 9 and I don't put it on my best of the year list, fuck you. That's just how I roll. Because things change and your mind changes, and sometimes things say and sometimes they don't. And so that is a similar thing because that's what happened in Logan and Wonder Woman for me, and they slightly dimmed. I still like those movies quite a bit. But I'll still give what I gave those movies, which is an 8. I really, really enjoyed this film a lot. It was just great to see a superhero film that's sort of classic, and it just tells a story based on character. That was the best thing for me. Everything was really based around a character study of Spider-Man, of creating a character that is interesting, of exploring what it means to be that character, how his powers interact with it, to have that more ground level thing. Just a side note, I thought it was great to see a high school that looks like a high school in modern day America with a lot of people of color, with a lot of people who looked like teenagers, thank God, who acted like teenagers, who didn't have embarrassing dialogue, who are, it felt like a high school in Queens. I really did feel like I was at a high school in Queens, which was really excellent for me. and a very memorable villain, a villain I actually cared about, which is like something Marvel has struggled with so fucking much. Oh, and just one other diversity thing I did like was I don't think I've ever seen a movie which is nice of a high school movie of a guy looks over at a woman and the woman comes in slow motion and that woman is black. So I just thought that was really cool. That's just something I don't think I can ever place in any other movie, which is just, I don't know, it's just nice. So it's a very interesting film. It's driven by character. Even the action is driven by character, which I appreciate, even though the action isn't the best. But I still very much enjoyed it, even if it has that sort of classic origin story. Yeah, third act. I don't think it's as weak as Iron Man's like third act or something like that. It doesn't feel as sort of here's the bad guy. It actually had like a bad guy who was built into the entire movie, where Iron Man was like, here's a bigger Iron Man.
Yeah, here's a actually that's funny. There's a bigger Hulk. There's a
there's a bigger Ant-Man.
There's a bigger
like
Ant-Man. Yeah. There's essentially
it's like a
Nazi,
when they don't know what to do with the
America.
villain. That's
There's
what
Captain
they go for.
Nazi. Yeah, it's true. It's pretty true.
It's part of the it's one of the Marvel formulas. It's not so good, but
it's basically Power Rangers bigger.
And the MCU stuff actually for once like really worked for me. And like a lot of times I find it a little annoying, but this time it actually felt like a real universe, and I feel like we're really settling in. So yeah, it's an 8 out of 10. It's probably my favorite Marvel movie since Winter Soldier. So there you go.
Damn. I give it an 8 out of 10 as well. I said as well. I think that Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 canon is like probably my favorite like superhero movie, which I know that like people have given me a lot of crap for it not being The Dark Knight. I disagree with that. I think The Dark Knight's very good. I've always been
those are the two I feel like those are the two people always are.
Very different.
Yeah.
It is a preference thing for me. Like I like that moment where everyone cheers the crowd or like saves Spider-Man and like lifts him into the subway car. Like that's a very saccharine moment that like at that age worked really, really well for me. This movie is something entirely different. But all the same, it's doing exactly what it set out to do. It's a highly successful movie in terms of doing what it wants to do, and I cannot fault it for that. I still think Spider-Man 2 is better because it sets out to do something entirely different and to my mind much more difficult in terms of the feeling that it's creating. At the same time, I will probably watch this movie much more than Spider-Man 2 because the jokes are just current and better, and Tom Holland gives a great performance. And I think it's a lot more fun. And I think the other thing too is I really wish that this movie existed when I was a kid a little bit, because that's seeing actual kids on screen is kind of a big deal actually in some kind of like a weird sort of way, because it kind of throws you off. And that was one of those moments where I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm almost 30. Like it's just like these are kids. These are kids.
Yeah.
Like and it's just and I guess that's kind of the situation. So the Movie Gang podcast gives Spider-Man Homecoming a 7.75, which I'm going to round up to an 8 out of 10. For the Movie Gang podcast, this has been Bobby Pike.
Thanks for watching, y'all.
Peter Dancy.
Love you.
Sean Solis.
Thanks, guys.
Ben Howarth.
Dark Knight will be 10 years old next year. Feel old.
Oh.
Stop it!
Why would you destroy my joke
You
like that?
monster!
All right, let me try to wrap up for you.
Oh, sorry.
See y'all.
No, you're good. You're good. And I don't want to think about that. I'm your host, Jack Newman, and this has been a production of the Tuscan Shed Media Network. If you want to see all our other great podcast content, head on over to TuscanShed.com, where you can see such shows as Animania, Geek Space 9, and coming back tonight in, well, it should have been 13 minutes ago, but we're late and behind, as Jenna will no doubt tell me, A Feast for Bros. So stay tuned tonight on the channel. We'll get this up in just a couple minutes. From everyone here at Tuscan Shed Media Network and the Movie Gang podcast, as always, thanks for listening. No, I shouldn't have clicked my teeth. I felt bad.
Too late.
I didn't like it. It's done. It's in the internet. This is
We're
the problem.
gonna wink and we're gonna click.
We all needed finger guns.